Hey guys, welcome back to more political chatter. Today we will be talking about this wild new poll that we have from the North Carolina Senate race in 2026 that shows a giant lead for the Democrat in such a crucial swing state in 2026, North Carolina. In this poll, the former governor, Roy Cooper, who is in fact running for Senate, he is a Democrat, very popular former governor, has a 7 point lead in North Carolina over the Trump handpicked candidate Michael Whatley, who served at the RNC. Now, a 7 point lead is insane in itself in such a close state. But keep in mind, Donald Trump won the state of North Carolina by 3% in 2024. If it goes 3 points red in 2024 to 7 points blue in 2026, that would be a 10 point trend towards the Democratic Party in 2026 in just 2 years. Could you imagine if a 10 point trend happened nationwide? You would have John Ossoff win by 8. You would have whoever the Democratic candidate will be for Senate in Michigan win by 9. You would have North Carolina's governor race flip blue by 7 points. The list goes on and on. It would be a massive blue wave year. More of a blue wave, even than, of course, 2018, a notoriously good year for the Democrats. So, needless to say, this new poll from Carolina Forward is absolutely insane, showing Roy Cooper with a 7 point lead in this state. Now, let's talk about something else here that we have from polling from this race that's also super interesting. You could see the whoever conducted this poll, Carolina Forward, said that of course Roy Cooper is the favorite to win this race, but also look at this polling data we have from earlier this month that showed 40% of voters in North Carolina have never heard of Michael Whatley. 40%. That is, compare that to the former two-term governor, Roy Cooper, who has what, probably 100% or a 98, 99% name recognition. This includes a third of Republicans. I'm shocked it's even that high. I had not heard of Michael Whatley before he jumped into the race, so I am shocked that for that 60% of voters had heard of him before he announced. So that is something to overcome, but that is something that you can overcome, that it is possible with that Trump endorsement, especially. But it really goes to show the weakness of this field for Republicans, the weakness that, the fact that Republicans were just simply not able to field a strong candidate. They've got solid candidates in other states, but for some reason in North Carolina, they were first looking at Lara Trump, right? Trump's daughter-in-law to run. Trump said no. The Donald Trump, President Trump, said no. She's too weak. Very smart move. But it doesn't look like this guy, Michael Whatley, is too much of an improvement from Larry Trump, given his name recognition, just given how unfamiliar he is with voters, and who knows. What's going on in his past. Roy Cooper, of course, has been vetted. He's a two-term governor. He's ran so many statewide campaigns. He has been vetted. There's nothing in his past that could come back to haunt him. Michael Whatley, who is this guy? I would not be surprised if we see another Mark Robinson situation, if you remember that from 2024. So keep that in mind too when it comes to fielding these very unknown sort of candidates. So I also want to point out that this is huge for Democrats' pathway to controlling the Senate in 2026. This is my current prediction. I have Democrats keeping their seats in Georgia and Michigan, and I have them flipping the red seats in North Carolina and Maine. Remember, North Carolina, this is currently a Republican seat. Tom Tillis currently holds this seat, but he wasn't MAGA enough for the base, even though he's incredibly far right. And he opted not to run again because there was talk that Trump was going to launch a primary bid against him. So this would be a Democratic flip if Democrats do in fact win it in North Carolina. And again, it's so crucial for Democrats to winning pathway of the Senate. With flipping North Carolina and Maine, they're at 49. They could make it 50-50. They can make it a split Senate if they knock off one more Republican somewhere. It could be Mary Peltola knocking off Dan Sullivan in Alaska. It could be James Tallarico pulling off an upset and winning against Ken Paxton in Texas. Or, of course, It could even be Dan Osborne, effectively a Democrat. He is a leftist on economic issues. If he would have absolutely been one of the strongest supporters of Build Back Better. Build Back Better comes to mind. Of course, he would have been strongly for it. And any major piece of legislation, I feel, Dan Osborne would go with the Democrats. So that's effectively a 50-50 Senate there. It could be any one of those. And Democrats have a 50-50 Senate. They could win two and get a majority. They could win in Alaska and Texas, or Alaska and Nebraska, or Texas and Nebraska, and boom, you've got majority for the Democrats, and that is not out of the realm of possibility. I just want to point out at all the way things are going for Republicans right now. They are going down. Trump is going down his approval. The generic ballot is going down for Republicans. In North Carolina, Democrats should have lots of hope when it comes to the Senate seat. Not to get your hopes up, but with such a strong candidate like Roy Cooper, they should absolutely win this race. So this was the county map in 2024. Whatever. I don't know why I brought that up. But what's really important is this shift that we've been seeing. Um, God, the shift that we've been seeing in North Carolina and many other states across the country, especially some of these southern states. There is a massive leftward growth around these metropolitan areas. Raleigh, North Carolina, of course. The biggest cities in lots of these states, are becoming more democratic, and it also goes for Republican areas too. What you notice in many, there's some exceptions, like heavily immigrant parts of New York, or the Rio Grande Valley in Texas, of course, swung hard towards the Dems or I'm sorry, towards the Republicans, towards Trump in 2024. But for the most part, what we're seeing in the United States is Democratic strongholds becoming more Democratic and Republican strongholds becoming more Republican. I mean, just look at the Atlanta metro area from 2016 to 2024. Look at, or here, look at the county map too. You could compare this to the county map. Here's the Democratic areas, right? The strongest Democratic areas in the state around the Atlanta metropolitan area. When you look at the part of the state that's becoming more Democratic, pretty much the only part that's becoming more Democratic, save a few in the northwestern suburbs or around Savannah, you see that the Atlanta metro area is becoming significantly more Democratic, while the rest of the state, right, these rural Republican counties are becoming slightly more Republican. Look at Douglas County. It became 21% more Democratic from 2016 to 2024. Paulding became 17 points more Democratic. Cobb, one of the most populous counties in the state, 13 points more Democratic. Gwinnett, 11 points. Fayette, 16. Even from 2020 to 2024. Of course, Biden won Georgia in 2020 by like 0.2%. And then Harris lost Georgia in 2024. Even from 2020 to 2024, you have many counties around the Atlanta metro area that are becoming more Democratic, some by significant margins. Douglas by 6, Henry by 9, Rockdale by 7. You've got a whole handful of counties that are shifting left, even from 2020. I mean, even from the Obama era, it's more clear. 2008, Democrats a landslide nationwide, but look at the Atlanta metro area. Even Harris is improving from that quite significantly too. Fulton by 10, Douglas by 30. Look at that. I mean, some of these margins are just insane. How much more Democratic some of these counties are becoming. Cobb by 24, Gwinnett by 27. I mean, these are just insane facts when you look at the map. And I brought up Georgia. We're not talking about Georgia, but I brought up Georgia because it's so clear with the Atlanta metro area. But look at around Asheville. Remember, you might remember Asheville from the flood that absolutely demolished the town in 2024, and then it got all political with how they distributed the funds. Well, the Asheville is a city in Western North Carolina, in one of these counties, probably Buncombe County or Henderson or Transylvania, one of these over here. But especially this part of the state is becoming significantly more democratic. It is trending towards the left. These small democratic strongholds are slowly growing and growing and growing. What you saw in 2008, if I could just bring up the Georgia map again, look at this. You had a small Democratic base. I mean, around Atlanta, right? It was Fulton, voted for Obama in '08 by 35. It was DeKalb, voted for Obama by a 59. And then you had Clayton, voted for Obama by 66. Massive margins, but only a handful, only a small, very small handful of these heavily Democratic counties. But what you've noticed since then is the suburbanization of the American electorate, where these suburbs are are first of all growing in population, and that's one thing to consider, but they are becoming significantly more Democratic, especially with Harris in 2024. Running that whole Liz Cheney campaign, which was incredibly unsuccessful nationwide, and she shouldn't have done that. But you can especially see the effects of that and the success of that. I shouldn't say success, but it was pretty successful in when you just look at the suburbs. But in the whole grand scheme of things, she shouldn't have done that because she lost so many other groups. But look at 2008. You had three heavily Democratic counties, and over time it grows. 2016, you have a few more. 2020, you have a few more, and then 2024, you even add one more, Newton. Now you went from 3 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 counties around the Atlanta metro area voting for the Democrat by a safe margin of 15% or more. '08 to 2024, they grow. So you started with a small stronghold, and it grew and it grew and it grew as the suburbs expanded, 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 and as suburban voters became more democratic, and more democratic. So what you had in North Carolina was a small, batch of blue, or patch of blue, I mean, around Asheville, and now you see it growing. What's the part of the state that's shifting most towards the Democratic Party as we speak? It is around the Nashville area. Look at all of these counties from 2016 to 2024 becoming more Democratic. It has fueled, in fact, it has fueled the overall leftward trend of Virginia from 2016 to 2024. In fact, Kamala Harris did better in North Carolina than Hillary Clinton did in 2016, not just around Asheville, but the state as a whole. But look at some of these counties. Transylvania shifting 10 points from 2016 to 24. Henderson shifting 13, Buncombe shifting 11, as well as all of these other more rural counties also seeing a small leftward trend. Then of course you've got Wake and Johnston, two heavily African American counties and some of the most populous in the state. Also shifting towards Harris. With this growing suburbanization of politics. So, that's it is something to keep in mind when you're looking at not just North Carolina, but all of these states. Wisconsin, you've got Waukesha, Harris gaining 7 points from 2016 from Clinton. Ozaki shifting 8 points from 16 to 24. So suburbs are trending heavily towards the left, and in a growing state like North Carolina, most of these newcomers in the state, most of these people moving to the state are moving to the suburbs, and most are Democratic voters. So Democrats should be feeling good about their chances in North Carolina as of now. That's where things stand right now. I hope you all enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't already. That helps out a lot. Drop a comment. Let me hear your thoughts on this, and I will see you all later.